Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're back with my home theater talker series where we've been looking at my home theater upgrade upstairs. And this all began about last December when I got the LG OLED television. I bought a 65-inch TV, which I absolutely love, and I've been trying to find the most economical way to get really high quality 4K video to that set. So of course we've got the NVIDIA Shield that's been doing a good job of that, but there are a lot of movies now that are using Dolby Vision, like the Star Wars movie here, that I can't rip out to a file and play through that NVIDIA Shield at the best possible quality. So that set us off on an adventure to find the right 4K Blu-ray player. And I went into this kind of blind in the sense that I didn't do a lot of research prior to buying my players. So the first one I went with was the Xbox One S, and I needed to get an Xbox One S anyhow for some stuff here on the channel, so I figured, hey, this might be a good way to kill two birds with one stone and get a decent playback device that could do everything I need. But as we saw in the initial video, it didn't quite stack up, has no Dolby Vision support, it's incredibly noisy, and it's not outputting video properly for the best color replication on screen. So that one was tossed out. Then we went to the Oppo Blu-ray player, which was awesome, but that player is very expensive, about $500 or $600. It's getting discontinued, so it's not going to be around all that much longer, and I felt like, you know, budget-wise, it was kind of overkill for what my needs were. So I went out about a month or two ago now and bought this player from Sony. This is the Sony UBP-X700. It's $200, so very affordable, at least in comparison to some of the other stuff we've been looking at here in the 4K series, and it actually is meeting my needs. And the only reason why I didn't review it earlier was that they didn't have the Dolby Vision update available for it yet. So when I bought it, it didn't support Dolby Vision, but now it does. It has had a firmware update get pushed down to it. So we're going to take a look at this player and tell you what I think of it. In this video, we'll look through some of its interfaces and explore some of the ways you can use it with your own 4K home theater. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one has reviewed what you're about to see before I uploaded it. So let's get into it now and see what this cheaper player is all about. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. This is not a very well-built device. In fact, it feels very hollow and cheap, a lot like what you would expect from a commoditized Blu-ray player you might buy at the department store. So it certainly doesn't have the Oppo's real heavy-duty feel, but playback quality is really all that I cared about, and it seems to be doing that just fine. The disc goes in over here. There's a door that will pop open when you eject the tray. That will flop back up there. You've got an eject button and a power button here. You can connect up your external storage to the USB port here. It'll play back pretty much anything, actually, within reason, including lossless audio like FLAC or AIFF or WAVE. So if you've got some high-quality audio, you can play that back here along with your MPEG-2 and MPEG-4 video. I'm pretty sure it supports HEVC stuff as well. On the back here, you've got the power that goes in right there. Here is your LAN port for connecting it up to Ethernet. It's 100 megabit, but that's good enough for most of what you're going to throw at this player over the network. It does have a bunch of apps, which we'll take a look at in a few minutes too, because the remote has the Netflix button on there, of course. I'll talk more about the remote in a few minutes. It does have Wi-Fi built in. It's A, B, G, and N. It is not AC. So my advice, always, if you can, plug it in via Ethernet. Now you'll notice there are two HDMI ports here on the back, because this player, like the Oppo, has the ability to send the audio out through a separate port. And this is important because if you have an older receiver that doesn't support 4K video, you can still use that older receiver. So what you do is run video out to your new TV over here, run this cable out to your receiver for audio so you can get your lossless audio working without having to upgrade the receiver. And as you all know from my previous episodes, I upgraded my receiver before I bought one of these players, and I didn't really need to because I could have just bought one of these dual HDMI outputs and been done with it. It does have the ability to adjust the audio delay, so if your audio is a little bit out of sync, you can adjust the delay inside the player to make sure the video and audio sync up. For other forms of surround sound, the non-lossless forms, you can run a coax digital out to your receiver as well on this. But that's it for ports. If you don't have HDMI, you're going to be out of luck. But I think for the most part, if you've got your fancy new 4K TV, it's going to support that. We did see on the Oppo player that it had more options for audio output. So for example, it could actually decode the audio and run it out to your receiver with a straight cable. This will not do that, of course, but again, for my needs, I didn't need anything all that fancy, and all that extra stuff and cost really wasn't necessary. Here's the remote, and it's a tiny little remote and not a great one. I think it does support HDMI CEC, so you can use your existing remote controls if you wish to control it. Not much to the remote here other than it being rather small. It's not backlit, of course, and you got your Netflix button there because Netflix paid to put that button on there. I'd love to see how much money they've paid over the years to get these buttons enabled on it. So that is it for the hardware. Pretty simple stuff here, but what we're going to do now is hook up my display and we'll see what you can do with this player. So here is the main menu of your Blu-ray player. Not a lot to look at here, kind of a Spartan interface, but there are a few apps. You might already have these apps on your fancy new television, but if you don't, they're on here, and you should be able to gain access to some of the more popular video services out there. You can also gain access to your Blu-ray disc here. This is for your USB drive if you have one plugged in. This is a mirror casting feature where you can screen mirror a PC or an Android device to the player. So if you want something on here really quickly in a wireless fashion, you can do that. There isn't much to choose from on the app front, though. You can see it's a very limited app selection. You also have the ability to play things over the network with the media server application here, which I will show you in detail in just a second. The Netflix experience I found to be pretty good. It does play back HDR video properly along with the 4K stuff. The issue, though, I was running into with this is that every time you change something on the menu, the screen blanks out, and then it loads up the trailer that runs in line with the menu here. And if I switch to Star Trek Voyager here, for example, the same thing will happen. It'll go blank, and then the trailer begins once again. So I think this might be the video mode switching on the player, which is what I want it to do. And it's going out of a menu and switching to some video, and it must be adjusting the frame rate or something. So they've got to work on that a little bit. But once the video is up and running, everything I found was working just fine on it. Amazon Prime Video looks the same as it does on other devices. HDR wasn't working for me, though, on Prime Video. YouTube was fine, same interface as we've seen on everything else, and it appeared to work as I expected it to, even at 4K at 60 Hertz. So if you lack a good YouTube client or any one of these clients, this might be a good supplement for that. Now, I was surprised that this player handles Blu-ray MKV files over the network better than the Oppo did. As we saw in the original video, the Oppo would take an exceptionally long period of time to spin those movies up, and they were often freezing and not working correctly. So far, this one's been a little bit better, at least with the 1080p stuff. So I can go into that little media playback application. It immediately found all of the available DLNA media sources on my network. If you've got one of these newer network-attached storage devices like a WD MyCloud or a Synology, they all have DLNA servers built in, and you can see just how quickly over the Ethernet network it's able to browse what's going on there. So I'm going to go pick out a Star Wars movie here real quick and load that up and see how it works. Now, I'm finding that generally it's taking about anywhere from 20 to 45 seconds for one of these movies to spin up here. So if we go and look at my least favorite movie here, Attack of the Clones, you'll see you'll get this little spinning wheel here for a bit. On the Oppo, this thing went on forever. This one will hopefully come up a little bit quicker than that. It is switching the player into 24p mode for these movies, and it's passing over the lossless audio too. So all those things have been good. But you will have to wait a little bit for these movies to come up. By comparison, when we were on the NVIDIA Shield with Plex or with Kodi, these movies spin up immediately. So there is a little bit of a lag here to get the movie started, but once it does start, it seems to be playing back as I would expect it to. So I don't think it's a replacement for my NVIDIA Shield by any stretch, but it could be a good supplement if I don't have an extra one available or something, or you just don't want to have to go through the process of buying additional boxes. This should at least do your Blu-ray 1080p rips okay. The issue, though, I'm having with it is with the 4K Blu-ray rips. Those are locking the player up completely to the point where I had to unplug it and plug it back in. So I think 1080p is about the best you're going to do with your Blu-ray rips here, but it does do a better job than the Oppo did with them. So not too bad on that front. Let's take a look now at playing discs the old-fashioned way. So we are now ready for disc playback, and I can take out my Blu-ray here of the Star Wars movie and pop that in. I don't have a Dolby Vision display, but this did work just fine upstairs on my OLED television. It switched into Dolby Vision mode properly. My other non-Dolby Vision movies work just fine as well. It switched into that proper color space, so it does all the switching just fine here. I was really quite pleased with that. Now this monitor here, although a 4K monitor, is not an HDR monitor, but the player here is converting the HDR video to non-HDR here on the display, so things are looking fine. So if you have a 4K TV but don't have the HDR capability, the movies won't look all that distorted. They won't look ideal, but they will certainly look better than they would if it didn't have that ability to convert back down to a standard color space. So I was pleased to see that too out of a relatively inexpensive player here. Now, if you get this player and you don't get Dolby Vision right away, there's a couple of things that you have to do. The first is connect it up to the internet so that you can get your update downloaded for that Dolby Vision support, because it wasn't on many of these players up until about a few weeks ago. So I'm guessing there's a lot out in the channel that still don't yet have this capability. So the first thing you'll want to do is go into your setup menu and run the software update. It'll download, I think, 2 or 3 different files. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes for it to conduct that update, and once it's done, you'll be good to go. Now, once you get the update and reboot, you need to go over to your screen settings, and in here, you'll have the option to turn on Dolby Vision output. That is off by default, mainly because most people don't have Dolby Vision TVs apparently, so you'll need to turn that on specifically to get it to work. But you don't have to turn it off if the movie doesn't support it. I'm finding it switches into the proper modes depending on what the movie has. But if you somehow want to watch the Star Wars movie in HDR10 and not in Dolby Vision, you will need to disable that feature first. But for any movie that supports HDR and not Dolby Vision, it will correctly switch into HDR. So I'm finding in my experience so far that the Dolby Vision HDR looks better than the standard HDR10. So for me, I have just left this setting on, and any movie that supports that Dolby Vision is going to get it on my TV set here. The other thing I suggest adjusting here is the 24p output mode. What I found here for the data content was that it was switched to off. Because I was streaming some stuff over my network, I wanted it to switch into that mode, so I turned it on auto for that. And the same went for the network content, so I moved that over to auto so that I could get that 24p mode to play back on here. So just 2 settings here that I think you need to do to get the best performance out of the player, and you'll be good to go. It is a very quiet player. There's no fan on it. The disc is a little bit noisier than the Oppo player was, but in listening to my movie with the player across the room from me, I really didn't hear it operating. So I think you won't have any real interruption of your entertainment here with the player running. So I have to say I am quite pleased with this purchase. I probably should have started here first, but in fairness, the Dolby Vision support wasn't yet available for this player when I first embarked on this journey. This firmware update just came out over the last maybe week or two. So it's good to now have that capability. I can play back my Dolby Vision movies the way I want, and I didn't break the bank to get there. There is a player, I believe, that costs a little less than this one from Philips. That one is about $175 on Amazon right now. It also has the dual HDMI output for those of you that have the older receivers. It also has optical audio out too. I haven't tried that one, so I can't comment on its video quality versus this one, but I would imagine it's probably going to be pretty close. I did hear it's a little more Spartan than this one is, so you might want to take a look at that one if another $15 is important to the budget there. But overall, again, with this $200 player, I think it's going to be just fine for most people who are in a similar situation to me, where they don't need the best, but they need something decent, and this is certainly decent. So I think that's going to do it at the moment for the home theater series. I am sure I'll be diving into it more as some of the NVIDIA Shield updates come out and we get better color switching and whatnot. So we'll be coming back to this, but I think for the moment, at least from a hardware standpoint, I have everything I need right now. But I would love to get some feedback from all of you on some maybe new topics to cover that I didn't cover in the course of the other videos. So let me know down in the comments below, and we'll keep this little series going here over the course of the year. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters of the Black Eyed and Blues Music Hour podcast: Chris Allegretta, Tom Albrecht, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.